So it might be, meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. It's
okay, good. Sarah, could you just double check that it's live streaming? Oh yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, I
Because
can check on YouTube.
thank
It
you.
looks like on the top of the screen you can see it says YouTube.
Yeah,
But I can double check.
brilliant. It's just it's coming up and then going off again on my screen.
This is weird because I don't even have social media and now I'm being live streamed on YouTube.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Just wait for Sarah to confirm.
Okay, cool. Should I share my screen anyway?
Yeah, if you could share your screen, that would be great. You ready to roll in? Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm here. Yes, you're live streaming.
Great, thank you.
It's all going.
Great, great. So just going to start now then. So Tigs, Knowles, I'm so pleased to be able to welcome you to Coding Black Females. Tigs, a full stack developer with Inuit QuickBooks, and she's going to be sharing her journey into tech and also giving tips on how to find good companies to work with. So over to you, Tigs.
Thank you. So yeah, hi everyone. I am Tigs. I work for Intuit QuickBooks. We also have MailChimp as a product. I don't know if anyone knows those products. But yeah, that's who I work for currently. I'm a software engineer, full stack software engineer. So I do front end and back end. And I'm basically just going to talk about how I got into tech and then some tips, like previously mentioned, on how to find the best companies to work for. So, and if anyone wants to ask questions and stop me, just like go ahead, just interrupt me. So this is basically how I got into tech. I did a business degree at Loughborough University. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I always like kind of mathsy problem solving type subjects. But I wasn't really sure exactly what that meant or what kind of job I could do. So I did business. And then in my final year of my final semester, I did a business programming module. So basically a bit of coding. And I really loved it. And I thought, this is great. This is something I want to get into. But at that point, I was 23, and anyone that I knew that coded had done a degree in coding. So I just kind of thought, well, I'll just like teach myself a few languages and do it on the side. But I didn't think I could do it as an actual job. So on the side of that, I also set up a business called the Toast Club, which is a mobile food truck selling toast. This is Tilly, the toast van. So I went to a couple of events, did that for about a year and a half. But on the side, I was in the evenings coding, teaching myself different things to do with coding languages and stuff like that. And so it kind of got to the point where I was wanting to code all the time. And I thought, right, let me try and figure out how I can actually do this as a job. So by this point, I'm 25 and I'm like, oh my gosh, all my friends have got graduate degrees and I'm, just starting out in this thing, and how am I going to be able to progress and all that kind of stuff. So I basically found apprenticeships. Apprenticeship schemes in the UK are schemes where you're basically trained up by an employer and then you're given a job. So you go and work for that employer and then you get a qualification. So after about 18 months, you get to do like a kind of coursework thing, and then you get given a qualification as an apprenticeship. It's basically, I mean, it's not equivalent to a degree, but I've never had any issues with job applications having that on my CV compared to people that have degrees on their CV. So for me, it's been a really great way to get into tech, and you kind of learn on the job. I'm not so good at kind of sitting down and learning theoretical things. I'm better at learning through actually doing. So that was really great. I did that from 25 to 27 years old at BAE Systems. I think they have 2 apprenticeship groups a year, so one in September and one in March. So if you're looking to do that, just look out for their job alerts. You can put job alerts on like LinkedIn and things like that. So yeah, that was really great. I learned a lot through doing that. And then after that apprenticeship. I could have stayed on. So you kind of, a lot of them, you get like a full-time job and you're just working for them on a permanent contract. So I decided to leave BAE Systems and I got a job at Intuit QuickBooks. So it's basically accountancy software. So if you're a small business and you want to file your accounts, so like pay your employees, file your taxes with HMRC, all those kind of things, then you can use our software to do that. So that's who I code for now. It says 25 to 27, but I'm 29 now. So it's definitely a couple more years on that. So yeah, that's basically how I got into tech. Does anyone have any questions so far? I'm just going to pause for questions. You can also put them in the chat if you don't want to speak.
Yeah, I want to speak.
Yeah. Hi.
Thank you so much for the feedback on how you got into IT or coding. So my question is, I studied the software engineering, but unfortunately my career just took me out of coding. So
Yeah.
I've been working for a long time, but I've never really done coding job. So currently I'm a business analyst, but I really want to go back into tech.
Yeah.
And how did you self-taught yourself coding?
Oh, actually, thank you for saying that because I forgot. So Code Academy
Code
is,
Academy, I said that.
yeah. So I basically use Code Academy, which is they have like a free version, then they have a paid version, but the free version is really great. You can get loads of different courses and stuff. So I started using Code Academy to learn languages like Python and JavaScript. I'll write them in the chat. Python.
Yeah.
Which are kind of, I mean, coding isn't easy, but they're the easier languages to learn when you're starting out. And you probably use Python as a data analyst, possibly a little bit.
Unfortunately, we use SQL,
Okay,
just SQL for interrogation and all that, but not Python. I'm wanting to learn Python, but
yeah. So Code Academy is a really great way to do that because you use the website. You don't need to set anything up on your computer. You literally just log in and you use their website for it. So you don't need to know like, how do I install Python on my machine?
Right.
What kind of thing do I use? So yeah, that's really great. And there's a couple of other websites as well, which I'll post in the chat after that I've used. But Code Academy is definitely a great starting point for that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
That's all right, no worries. Okay. I will also have time for questions at the end. So if anyone thinks of anything and you want to ask, I'll leave time at the end as well. So cool. So then I'm going to talk a bit about my apprenticeship because I think that's important to highlight kind of what it entails. So I started off in 2019. We did 4 months in Manchester training. So we basically, I mean, this is just specific to my company. It doesn't mean you will have to go to Manchester. It most likely be London, depending on the company. So yeah, we basically learned the coding fundamentals, ways that the teams work. So we didn't just learn about coding, but we also learned how we would work within the company and within the organization. Different jobs we can do. So we learned about data analysts, UX designers, so like designing how the front end looks, front end and back end engineering, and then Scrum masters who basically like manage the teams and don't necessarily do as much of the coding. So there's loads of different jobs. You don't just have to be a coder if you don't kind of get on with it. There's different ways that you can get into the industry without having to code specifically. And then on the apprenticeship as well, we did lots of projects. So we kind of work in teams, build different projects, and then present them as well. And the presentations part was really good because especially if you're not as confident, doing an apprenticeship and kind of learning those soft skills is really important in tech because a lot of the time you think you just kind of sit and code all day and you don't speak to anyone, but there's a lot of communication needed between teams. And it's very important to be able to kind of express your point of view. I think especially as women, I think we're mostly women on the call. But well, personally, my experience, especially as women, it can be in quite a male-dominated environment. You can feel sometimes that you don't want to speak out or you're not really sure how to communicate, to a group of people that don't look or are like you. So yeah, that was really helpful to kind of build my confidence. So yeah, after 4 months, training in Manchester, I then went into the industry. So I went into London. My apprenticeship had a choice of London, Leeds or Manchester, but it just depends which course you're on. So I went to London and I basically just started being a junior software engineer. So they put me into a team and they were like, this is the new junior software engineer, help her, give her the support she needs. And then you just kind of go into the team. I had a buddy, so the buddy kind of worked with me on everything. So I wasn't alone, but it was really great to kind of feel like, even though I'm junior and I don't know a lot, I'm able to just go and work on tickets and contribute to the projects. And I'm not just kind of given like you know, write notes on the meeting or something like that. It was really great to actually put it into practice. And again, as long as you, especially if you work for a good company, you'll always have a buddy or someone to support you and help you through that. And I'm going to speak later on how to know which companies are good to work for and things like that. And then alongside the kind of work that I was doing for the team, I also had to complete an apprenticeship portfolio. So that included evidence of the work I'm doing. So when you get the qualification, you can't just say like, I've done this stuff. You need to give proof and show screenshots of your work and kind of explain the decisions you made in your code and things like that. So I did that over kind of 12 months time. My company gave me, I think, like 4 or 5 hours every week to work on that. So I didn't kind of have to do it outside of work. It's actually involved in your work time, which is quite nice because you don't feel like you're having to do extra on top of that. And yeah, then I got the qualification. So I think 18 months later, I was qualified. And yeah, so that was basically the first kind of year and a half. And then after that, I worked to kind of like develop my tech skills and work on different projects. And then I got promoted to software engineer 2, which is like the next level up from junior. And that kind of involved working more independently and kind of taking small pieces of work and leading on them. So what are the requirements of the work? What do I need to do? And kind of working out the coding that we need to do for that, what kind of pieces of work we need to do first, and then doing all those bits of work basically. So that's when you've got a bit more autonomy, you've got a bit more independence, and you can make decisions yourself. So yeah, that was really great, and it kind of helped me develop a lot as an engineer. So yeah, that was the apprenticeships. That was my first job. If I go, and now I'm going to talk about what my job entails now. So I'm still a software engineer 2, going for promotion to senior. So hopefully I get it in July. But yeah, this is kind of what my job entails now. So I think a lot of the time you think that coding is, like I said before, just sitting down in front of a screen and like coding, but it actually entails a lot more than that. So the first kind of backbone of my job is back-end and front-end coding. So I have tickets to work on. I have like test requirements that I have to meet, and I have to create code in order to fix those problems for customers, basically. These are the languages that we use in my job, all of these different languages, but there's also other languages that I kind of like tap on now and again. And different jobs use different languages. So if you have a specific language you want to learn, you can actually search for jobs that will specify in that language. You don't have to work on these ones. So yeah, that's kind of the main part of my job. And then the second part is gathering requirements, outlining work. So as an engineer, especially when you get some of the more senior levels, you have to not only just do the coding, but you have to understand what is the coding for, who's asking for that piece of code and that kind of requirement. What information do I need? Do I need designs from a designer? Do I need to analyze some data to kind of decide which pieces of work we work on? Do I need to work with customer service teams to say, you know, a customer's having problems with this, can I fix it for them? And then global teams as well. So my company is a global company, so I work with India teams and US teams as well. And that can be quite difficult when you're working across time zones and your communication is just on Zoom. You can't really build up like a personal relationship with people. So that's always a challenge, which again helps to have kind of soft skills to get on with people and build a relationship, basically. So yeah, that's the second part of my job. The third part is infrastructure management. I'm dyslexic as well, by the way, so there's probably spelling mistakes all over the shop here. That's meant to say management. So that's basically, if you have a piece of code, how are you going to make that code available to someone? So it's the way that you kind of release code to production. We use Kubernetes, AWS, and a MySQL database. So you can actually get specified jobs that work just on infrastructure things instead of on kind of coding tickets and things. But software engineers in general will have to do at least a little bit of this just to help kind of manage their software and things like that. And then the fourth thing that I do is mentoring and knowledge sharing. So especially when you get more senior, you kind of have members of the team that you might want to support, you might want to help, and you also get help from other people as well. And a good company will have people in the team that are always willing to jump on a call with you, work through issues with you, and kind of help you develop your career. So that's a part of my job. And then also presentations and share outs. So there's a lot of kind of things that I find in my job that might be issues for the whole team. So instead of just thinking, how do I solve this for me and make it better, I will also share to the team, like, this is what I discovered, so that they can all benefit from that knowledge. And that's a really great way to kind of get visibility. And when you're going for promotions and things, doing things like share outs and presentations can be really great to show your manager that you're kind of taking initiative and taking initiative to learn and share that with the team. Yeah, so that's what my job entails now. Before I go on to the next slide, does anyone have any questions here? Cool. Okay, let me go to the next slide. So the next one is basically about how to find good companies to work for, because I've had quite a few people message me on LinkedIn kind of asking, I want to get into tech, I want to do an apprenticeship or an internship, but how do I actually know which companies to work for? Because there's so many out there. So one thing that I use is called the Great Place to Work survey. So this is basically loads of companies, not just in tech, but I think tech is like the main thing that they do it for. And these companies all their employees are kind of asked, do you enjoy working at the company, and all these different questions. And then the companies are rated on how well they perform in those surveys. And that can give you a really good indicator of whether a company is good to work for. So the one that I usually look at is best places for wellbeing or best places for women. The best places for wellbeing survey, I don't know if did I put a link on here? Yes. Okay. So the best places for wellbeing survey, it's basically, is a company kind of, does it care about your mental health? Are they good at kind of helping you progress in your career? All those kind of things. And so I usually end up looking on this survey. You can choose small, medium, large, or super large. And I just go for maybe like the top 10, 15 companies if I want to apply for a job. And I start there. And obviously the top companies, everyone's applying for, everyone wants to work for them. So you have to kind of keep trying and try all of these different companies. But yeah, this is a really great place to start. And it's interesting because a lot of these companies you might not have even heard of, and you might not even think of applying for jobs for them, or even they might not come up on your LinkedIn or anything. But if they're on this survey, it's a pretty good indicator that they're a company that you'll want to work for, or at least be interested in interviewing for. So yeah, the wellbeing survey is definitely a good one. And then the best places for women as well. I think especially in tech, you really do have to, take your time to find a good company, because a lot of companies are very, aware now that there's not a lot of women in tech, and they're trying to do things to get more women into tech. But I think this survey is a really good way to find a company that actually cares about getting women into tech and looking after the women that work for them. Even down to things like, I mean, I'm not thinking of having children anytime soon, but things like that, you want to work for a company that really cares about the women and the struggles that women go through and all those kind of things, menopause and all that kind of stuff. You want to work for a company that actually cares and is going to try and improve the experience of the women that work there. So yeah, these are the two that I usually use. Does anyone have any questions on that?
So, sorry.
There is a question in the chat from Hilda. Hi, I'm 31 and I know I'm still young, but feel as though time is flying. What practical steps would you suggest, or how would you recommend I approach a career change? Wants to leave current role and move into tech in the quickest time possible. And she said she's really enjoyed the presentation so far.
Thank you. Yeah, so you've definitely got so much time. You don't need to panic or anything. I think the biggest mistake we make is thinking, we haven't got a lot of time, we need to do everything now, and we just go for a company just because we want to get into it and we think we haven't got enough time. But what I would say is that it would be really good if you could look at apprenticeships, because not only do they pay for you to get trained up, which can be like 15, 20K if you pay for it yourself, but you get a job after, and you also get to learn on the job, and you get a qualification. So it's kind of like 4 in 1. The only issue with apprenticeships that I say is that they don't pay as much at the start. So my apprenticeship was £27,000 a year, which was really good for an apprenticeship. But it kind of depends on what you earn now and whether you're willing to take the pay cut. But the thing is, you can progress really quickly. So as you saw in my previous couple of slides before, I think it was like 2 years before I got promoted to the next level. And so you can actually excel your salary quite quickly, but you do kind of have to take maybe like 2 years of a bit of a pay cut to train up and things like that. But for the long term, it's really beneficial. And yeah, definitely just making sure that you look on these surveys and things to find a good company and not just kind of panic and go for the first one that you see. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. If not, you can write another one in the chat or message me on LinkedIn. Was there another question from the group?
Sorry, she asked the question I was going to ask. I was going to say, for somebody like me that have been working and you just want to, dive back into tech, how do you go about it? But you've answered it already, so.
Yeah, another thing that I've seen in a lot of companies, and my company have it as well, especially if you're a data analyst, is that if you can find a company that does mobility moves, so basically you go into a company as a data analyst or as a different role, and then the company is really interested in hiring within. So at my company, for example, if I wanted to go and become a data analyst, I could tell them, and if there's space and they have the funding and everything, they can train me up and I can move into that sector and become a data analyst. So if you find a good company that has that, they're usually called mobility moves, but it might be called different things at different companies, then it's a good way for you not to have to kind of start as an apprenticeship and work your way up, rather switch within your current company. So yeah, that's another way that companies do it. Does that answer your question?
There's another question, which is it best to ask a company if they will take on an apprenticeship, even if they're not currently recruiting?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the good thing about apprenticeships is that the companies get given money from the government to run them. So it's really financially beneficial for a company to take on apprentices. I think it's something like 25,000, don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 25K a year or something that companies get per apprentice to take them on. So if a company is not doing apprenticeships, or they haven't got any available, it's always worth asking them, because I think most companies want to look into it because it's a real like financially beneficial decision for them. The only thing I would say with that is that as an apprentice, you do need a lot of support. And if it's a company that haven't done apprenticeships before, then there might be a possibility that they haven't got processes defined. They don't really know what apprenticeships entail. And so you might not get as good an experience. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but you might not get as good an experience at a company that hasn't done apprenticeships before and is kind of learning how to take them on, rather than a company that's got kind of done it before and has experience and knows the support that apprentices need. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. If not, let me know. Any more questions?
No, that's it for now. And Hilda just said thank you for answering her question.
No worries. Cool. So my next tip on how to find great companies to work for is LinkedIn. So this is an example of someone from my company. So my company has a really great culture where we have different networks. So we've got the Pride Network, we've got the African Ancestry Network, we've got the Women's Network, Muslim Network. We've got loads of different networks basically, and they're employee networks. So if I'm an employee and I'm queer and I want to go into a company, I'll probably look for companies that have an employee network, like a Pride network, because it means that they're actually setting up something for their employees to celebrate, diversity and things like that. I think for example, on International Women's Day, there was a lot of companies posting, about the women that work at their place and all those kind of things, which was really great. But I didn't see loads of posts about things that they were actually doing to like educate and support the women within their company. So this is something that my company did. We did a breast cancer awareness talk where we had different people that worked at the company that had breast cancer, talked about their experiences. And then we also got in some people from outside the company to talk about their experiences as well, some of our customers. And that was really great because it's kind of giving a voice to your employees, supporting them, and also giving a voice to the customers that kind of fund the business. And yeah, this is someone from my company that posted that. So if you go on LinkedIn and you kind of see a company, or do I want to work for them, it's really great to look at the employees and what the employees are posting that's happening in the office, but also what the company page is posting. Are they just posting Happy International Women's Day to all the women that work at our company, or are they actually doing things on that day for their employees to celebrate them and to support them? And this is my profile. So I'm the head of the Pride Network at Intuit. So a lot of the time, if you're a head, well, in my company anyway, if someone's head of a network, they'll have it in their LinkedIn bio. So you can also do that. You can look at the employees of the companies that you're looking to apply to a job for, and you can see, are they like chairs of a network? And just basically see through that what the companies are actually doing for their employees. LinkedIn's a really great way if you look deep enough. I mean, I'm pretty good at like delving deep into companies and what they offer. So if you really spend the time to look into it and actually see what are people posting, you can really get a feel for a company's culture, and how much they care and how much effort and time and money they put into these things. So yeah, and I'm also happy if anyone ever is wondering whether they should apply for a job at a company, you can message me on LinkedIn. I've helped people before to kind of like look into the company and find out these things as well. So yeah, does anyone have any questions on that?
There's no questions at the moment.
Cool. So that's basically it. That was an overview of what I do for a job. I just kind of wanted to have like 20 minutes to talk, and then I wanted to leave time for everyone to ask questions and things. This is my LinkedIn. If you want anything, just message me. CVs and stuff. I've done quite a few CV reviews of people as well. I can send you my CV so you can kind of see what it looks like and what companies are looking for. I also do a lot of interviews at my company, so I'm kind of up to date with like what the interview process is and what we're kind of looking for in engineers at the minute. So it's quite useful if you need advice on what to put on your CV and like what to do in interviews and things. Yeah, just give me a message and I can help you with that. I can see a question in the chat. I've just changed careers into tech and completed a boot camp. Now I'm applying for jobs, internships, and apprenticeships. Do you have advice on elevating CVs? Yeah, so I think maybe I'll just get my CV. Oh, it has my address on though, so I probably shouldn't because it's on YouTube. But I'll send you my CV after if you message me on LinkedIn. Yeah, so with tech CVs in general, I tend to put like a skills section on. Do you know what? If I just stop sharing my screen quickly and then I can get it up without my address showing, because I think it would be useful. Sorry, I should have prepared this before.
Mariam, were you wanting to say something? You were on mute.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just gonna say it's fine to stop sharing, but then she did anyway.
Okay. Okay, I found it. Cool. So let me share again.
And Hilda's also asking about LinkedIn profiles. Maybe a look at what's a good profile might be good as well.
Sure.
If you've got the time.
Yeah. So let me show my CV first. So yeah, this is my CV. I've got my personal details at the top, and then I have my languages and technologies. So what I usually do is if I'm applying, I know quite a few different languages, but my top kind of strongest languages, I always put at the top, at the front. If I'm applying for a job that uses Python, I'll put Python at the top because I think I mean, I'm not a recruiter, but reading through a CV, you kind of scan, and the first thing you're going to see is this. So you need to really look through each job application, what languages they're asking for. If you know those languages, then put those languages at the top so they can see them. I wouldn't recommend applying for, if there's a language, if you're kind of starting off at apprenticeships and stuff, it doesn't really matter what languages they use because you can learn and become strong in it. Whereas if you've been in it for like 4 or 5 years and it's a language you've never used before, obviously you can still apply for the job, but it might mean that you might be hired as a bit more of a junior engineer compared to what you are now. But yeah, so I put a list of the languages, and even if you're applying for an apprenticeship and you've kind of done like a couple of courses on Python and you don't know too much, if that's your strongest language, then put it at the top. You need to sell yourself, and it's really hard learning languages and starting out. So even if you know a little bit of Python, it's always good to put it there to show your diversity. Then I put my qualifications. So I've still got my business degree there. I don't know why. I think because I've paid so much to my student loan, I feel like I should just put it there for the sake of it. But yeah, my software engineer apprenticeship is at the top because that's the most important thing. And then a qualification that I did before as well. And then I have my work experience. So I don't know I mean, it's always worked for me. I've never been told to do this by a recruiter, but it works for me to put my skills in bold. So if a job is asking for me to work with RESTful APIs, I'll make sure I put that keyword in bold. Because when you kind of just look at this, the bold things do stand out. So if I look at the job application, take out the keywords, key skills they're looking for, make sure I put them in if I have them and put them in bold, so it stands out. And it also just helps the recruiter just to kind of see quickly that you do have the skills, because as soon as you're past the CV part, if you're like personable and you match the company, it's going to be, you know, that then you're just selling yourself. Whereas the CV, it's really difficult to sell who you are. So I think it's important to match the skills of the job up with the skills in your CV. So yeah, I basically just have a couple of the jobs that I've done. I put the Toast Club thing here, which might seem a bit weird for a tech job, but as an engineer, companies in general, they don't just want someone that's an engineer, they want someone that's like personable, someone that has like knowledge of other things, especially when it comes to a business that, like my company, we have a lot of small businesses that we that use our product. So it's really useful for my company to see that I had a small business, because I can give a different perspective on the work that we do. So if there's something that you're proud of and something that you feel shows kind of your personality and some different skills just to kind of engineering skills, then definitely put it in there if you have space. And yeah, I try to keep each job to, I mean, this is too big. I really need to cut this down. I try to keep each job kind of, this is, I would say this is kind of a good size. Or like I have with this, my current job, I will split it into sections just so it's a bit easier to read. And the last thing on my CV, if a company, so companies have different values. So if you search like my company and the company values, we have integrity, we've got be bold, different things like that. So if I'm applying for a job, I'll look at the company values and I'll try and put a couple of them as a header, and then put a section underneath to explain how I meet that company value, because they'll just try to map your kind of personality and work to the values that their company have. So yeah, that's another tip. Does anyone have questions on that?
There's no questions yet. Well, that is the yeah. So Hannah's just saying nice. It's really nice, and she said so you tailor your, and she's asking if you tailor your CV for each job.
Yeah, so I do. I have, this is kind of like the backbone of my CV, so I won't rewrite the whole thing. But if a job's looking for like a specific skill or a specific like language or framework that I need to work on, then I'll make sure that I put that in there. And I always find, especially being dyslexic, that it's really hard for me to cut my CV down. So anything that I'm kind of like really proud of, but it doesn't really meet the company's skills that they're asking for, I'll take it out, because it's not, you don't really want to take up unnecessary space. So yeah, I will tailor my CV to each job, but I use this same format. And I just kind of change the certain words or the phrasing to make it sound like it matches what the job's asking for, if that makes sense. And yeah, definitely these headings to meet the company values, I change that for every company, because they're different at all companies. And I think looking at CVs myself, it's quite obvious sometimes when someone hasn't changed their CV to kind of match the job, because there's words in there that kind of explain something in a way that you wouldn't usually say it in, and it's obvious that it's like a company specific language rather than kind of what they would describe it as, if that makes sense. I hope that answers your question. And then LinkedIn profiles. So I'm just gonna open mine. I mean, I don't think mine LinkedIn is a model LinkedIn, to be honest, but we can have a look anyway. So let's have a look. So this is my LinkedIn. Obviously I put my job title at the front, and then the co-chair, pride co-chair. So if there is any kind of like position that you have within the company that shows your kind of skills other than engineering, I think it's always good to put it there. So I put that there, and then I have, in general, I have an about me section that I haven't edited for ages. But if there's any kind of activities that you do, so I did a presentation for Coding Black Females, and I made sure to share that as well, because I just think if an employer is scanning your profile, it's always good for them to see that you're kind of active and doing things, especially in tech. Things are always changing, and and there's always like new languages and frameworks and things coming out, and there's always new ways that you can kind of get involved in things. So I think showing that you're active and you're doing stuff within the industry that's outside of your job shows that you actually really love working in tech, and it's not just kind of a job for you. I was about to say it's a lifestyle, but that's really cringy. But it's something that you're really passionate about, rather than just being like a 9 to 5 that you do. So yeah, I kind of repost things and have all my job history on here as well. I kind of try and match the job history up with the CV just so it all aligns. And yeah, any certifications as well. So if you have, I think someone said they've done a boot camp. So if you've done that, make sure that you put it on your LinkedIn to show that you've done that. Yeah, and then I mean, I guess something that I should really do that some people do is they add skills for the languages that they learn. So I mean, I have them all here actually. So you can add all the languages that you know as well. But I don't know how much employers really look at this section of it. But it's always good to have. Yeah, and then LinkedIn pictures, I don't really know what the rule is around that. I always try and have a professional picture just because I don't know, it looks good, but I don't think it really makes much of a difference, to be honest, what you have. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I thought that was a really good answer.
Cool.
There aren't any other questions in the chat. Does anybody want to go off mic and ask a question? Sometimes it takes a little while. Hannah's asking, do you have any tips on tech tests?
Yeah, so do you mean just
Like,
kind of tests that you have to do, or do you mean coding exercises? Because I found there's 2 types of tests that you do in a coding interview. They either give you tests that you go on and you do like a really small coding challenge and you try and solve it quickly, or they give you like a problem and you have to build like an application basically. I think at the kind of apprenticeship levels, it's probably more tech tests. So I'll answer for that first. So it's been a long time since I did a tech test. But I think in general, if it's on a specific language, which it most likely will be, try and get as much information as you can before and do some research. A lot of the time, these tests are kind of from a specific place, so they're reused across different companies. So if you can, yeah, get as much information as possible and then search online and see if people have done it before. I mean, I'm not telling you to like go and look up the answers, obviously, but I think the internet has a lot of information and a lot of these tests will be based around similar things. So just do your time, do your research and spend time looking into like
sorry.
it's all right, no worries. Yeah, do spend some time looking into like what the tests are and whether anyone's done them before, because I mean, I've had it before where I've been asked to do a coding exercise for a job interview, and then I've searched it online and someone's literally done the same job interview and posted their answer. What I wouldn't do is see an answer and just learn the answer and do that, because you don't know if it's right or wrong. It's very obvious when you don't know your code, because if you're in an interview and you're asked to explain it, it's very obvious the people that haven't actually done the code, because they can't really explain it in detail and they can't talk through their problem. So it's good to look online and see what kind of answers people are using and those kind of things. But I would always try and just use that as like research and do your own kind of answer, to make sure that you're actually like not letting yourself down when it comes to the interview part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and there are other things you can use as well. There are platforms like LeetCode that let you do some kind of small tests or small projects in terms of learning how to time yourself or try to solve problems.
That's a good shout, actually. Yeah, that's a good point. I used to do I think it's called dailycodingchallenges.com or something, where they're just little, like you said, small little snippets of so I think someone's asking what that's called again. Did you say it's called Neat Code?
Leet, LEET. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, cool.
LeetCode.
Leet, okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. So a lot of the kind of tech tests that you're asked to do at the beginning are these like small coding problems that someone just said they use Code Wars. Oh yeah.
Oh, great. That's a
Yeah.
good one.
So it's always good to practice those things, if anything, just to like keep your kind of mind working and get into the problem solving mode. And they're quite fun to do as well.
Yeah, and the other thing it'd be good to touch on is GitHub and what to put onto GitHub maybe.
Yeah, so honestly, when I was at the last the careers fair for coding black females, I think the recruiter said that no one really looks at GitHub for, I mean, I also don't quote me on this because I'm not a recruiter and I don't really know what they look at, but I stopped putting my GitHub on my CV because I used to do little projects and stuff like that, but no one was really looking at it. I was going into interviews and saying, "Oh, have you seen this project and stuff?" And they weren't really looking at what was on my GitHub. And the tech tests and the code kind of projects that you're asked to do for an interview is enough for them to see what your coding style's like, and they always talk through it with you. So personally, for me, I don't really use my GitHub anymore, and I don't put it on my CV, but I might be wrong in saying not to do that. So I don't want to tell you not to, and then it's the wrong thing. But yeah, I've never found that GitHub has helped me in any job applications or anything.
Well, that's good to know. That's good to
Yeah.
know for people.
But I mean, the thing is, if you have a GitHub and it shows good work, it shows your best work, then there's no harm in putting it on. But if you have GitHub and you've got some projects that you're just kind of experimenting and the code isn't that great and it's all over the place and it was just you having a bit of fun, and then you put that up, you don't want them to look at that and think, oh God, they're really not good at coding. So if you are going to put your GitHub on there, you just need to make sure that it's like your best work. It's probably better to have just one project that's really good than to have 10 projects that are kind of average, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good advice. That kind of have it as best work approach. That's really good.
You even have 2 GitHubs. You could have one for your kind of like messing around stuff, and then you could have one where you just put your projects that are your like best work. Yeah. And also one thing with GitHub I would say is if you're not sure if you haven't worked as a coder before in a company, there's processes that companies use in GitHub. So for example, I can't show you my companies because it's obviously we're on YouTube, but things like if you're pushing a bit of code up, what message do you use? It's called a commit message. So when you commit a bit of code to GitHub, you add a message to say what the code does. And companies like them to be in a nice format. They like them to explain the code well. So you can look through and you can see, okay, this bit of code does this bit of code does this. And they like you to do like small and frequent code, like pushing your code up little and often, basically, instead of pushing up like massive chunks at once. So yeah, another thing is if your GitHub has good kind of commits and good commit messages and stuff, then it shows a company that you're kind of already aware of what they'll need. But I think for more junior positions, it's probably like apprenticeships and things, it's probably not as important because that's something that they'll teach you during the apprenticeship. Yeah.
That's great. So Nakisha, do you have a question? Oh. There's another question. I would like to transition into UX UI design, design career. Do you have suggestions on any resources on how to start this career change?
Yeah, so I don't know too much about becoming a UX and UI designer because let me just quickly, I'm just going to see if Code Academy have anything to do with that. Yeah, so Code Academy actually do have a UX UI designer section. So this could be a really great place for you to start because you can probably read all about what the job entails, and they've got different, I mean, I've never seen any of this stuff because I'm not a UX designer, but I'm sure that this stuff is all great. Code Academy is just a really good tool for learning how to code. But I think because coders can do so many different things, it's not just about coding. UX designer is a type of like engineering job. So any kind of Code Academy or website where you learn to code, I think will probably have things like this on it as well. But also I would encourage you to reach out to UX designers on LinkedIn. So you can literally type in like a UX designer. You can even do it in my company, Intuit UX designer, and message people on LinkedIn, because whenever I get a message, I always reply. I think it's nice to be able to talk about your job and to people outside of your company sometimes, and help people get into the role. So yeah, I would encourage you to message people on LinkedIn and ask like UX designers specifically. Because unfortunately I don't know too much about how to get into that job. Yeah,
it's a good idea to kind of connect with UX designers.
yeah.
I think there's check the hashtags as well that they might use, because I think there are things like 30-day challenges and kind of, and there's projects that you can work through. So that's also a good approach to kind of work out how to start and build a bit of build up your experience and knowledge.
I also don't know what kind of company you work for currently, but if that's a job within your company, it might be worth trying to speak to your manager or someone within, or a UX designer within your company, to see if there's a way that you can like train up or move positions, or at least like shadow a UX designer. And yeah, always, I mean, even if you message a company, someone that works at a company and ask like, is there a way that I could, people have messaged me before saying, is there a way I can come and shadow like a data analyst at your company? And it's not always possible, but it's something that I can always try and make happen, like message someone. So yeah, just be open to asking people on LinkedIn for help with stuff like that. Someone said there's a group on Facebook called Women in UX. Oh, nice. That's really cool. They probably have a LinkedIn as well that would be good to have a look at. Yeah, there's what I've discovered is that there's a group for everything. Like I found it's really good. I found a group of women with ADHD that are coders. I think they're called ADHD babes on LinkedIn, and they're basically a group of women that have ADHD, and they're all programmers, and so they all connect on like the struggles that they have and how they can help improve their experiences and things like that, which is really good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we might have come to the end of the questions, and I think it's these are kind of like lunchtime breaks, so it might be good to kind of give people a bit of time to just grab a coffee and a snack to eat. There is one last question, I think. What's your advice for a software developer at a company that mainly uses a custom platform like WordPress to code? Will that affect future job prospects?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think I know what WordPress is.
Oh, okay. WordPress is a big, well, it was one of the largest CMSs, content management systems, and is behind a lot of, well, it's the framework that a lot of websites are built on. And there's a really large community. So I don't think WordPress is going to go out of style too soon, because I think it's got at least 30% share of the market of websites, like that 30% of the websites are built on WordPress at the moment, although there are a lot of challenges. But I think there's a broader question here, which is actually how do you make sure you've got a broad range of skills for a lot of different roles? So what might be a good advice for you is to kind of really understand not just the front end and the content management system side of it, but to maybe look at how the back end works and how to then develop that for other kinds of content management systems or ways of working, or maybe even cloud-based web services.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And also things like hackathons, they're a really great way to go and do a hackathon at the weekend or in the evening, and go and just work in something you've never worked in before with people that you've never worked with. And it can give you a really good insight into different jobs and what you enjoy. And you can even like network and meet people that you might have opportunities through that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we should all say a big thank you to Tigs. Oh no, we can't just yet. Here's another question. What's the best approach to get yourself familiarized with the latest tech?
So there's I speak to the people that I
Sorry,
work.
I mean technologies and languages, because for me, I've just worked with dated languages, and that's why I'm basically struggling, because I've been with my company for years, like donkey years, and we don't use any of this latest technology, and that's why I'm struggling to actually get out,
Mhm.
and I feel stuck.
So one of the good things to do is to look at the kinds of jobs that are on the market and what languages they're using, because sometimes the latest tech isn't the tech that's being used by the most companies. So if you want to learn the latest tech, that's one thing. But if you want to learn the tech that's going to give you the most job prospects, that's a different thing. So it's definitely good looking at like the top companies that I showed you before, seeing what kind of tech they use, and then looking to learn that tech. Also, there's a social media called DevX, and that's basically a social media for devs where they write just like everything about everything, basically. So like different technologies they found, new little frameworks and things that they've discovered or they've built. So that can be a really great way to kind of engage with developers. Yeah, but I would definitely say start at looking what the big companies and the companies you want to work for, what tech they use, and go from there. If that makes sense.
And Ifeoma, in terms of your skill set as a data analyst, you've got SQL. If you then move to Python as your next language and maybe just focus on that, that would be a really good complement to the skills you have. And it opens up roles such as data scientist and you know, and that there's more prospects for that combination.
Right.
Okay. Great. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. So now we can all go all give Tigs a great big thank you. And actually it's so special that you've kind of shared all your knowledge and your approaches as well, because yeah, Viv saying thank you so much, Tigs, because actually, you know, kind of having tips and advice as to how to start is often the hardest bit. That beginning can be such a you know, such a challenge. It can feel like such a wall for people. So thank you for spending the time and talking through the way you've approached it. It's been brilliant. Thank
That's
you.
okay. And just honestly, anything you need, just message me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to look at CVs and help with all that stuff. So yeah,
Oh,
thank you for
amazing.
having me.
Yeah, lots and lots of thank yous in the chat. And yeah, a really useful session. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, bye now. Bye.
Bye.